Morning, folks. Welcome back to Three's In. So, this morning I'm going to start out by telling you a little bit about my grandmother's house. It is an ordinary house, it's a normal house in Whitehouse, Ohio. And nothing particularly special about it. It's not on the National Registry or anything, but it was a wonderful house, just full of love, warm, homey, if you will. So, with that being said, it came about in 1937. After the Depression broke, the people of Whitehouse, Ohio came together as a community and they built this house for my grandfather. Now, my grandfather had been a grocer, and during the Depression years, he extended a lot of credit to people around the community. And a lot of people would come in, and Granddad knew they didn't have money to pay. But he just couldn't turn them away. That was just his nature. He couldn't turn anybody away. So he just gave them what they needed on credit. He extended the credit. But he had to pay for it. So in order to pay for it, he sold his part of his inheritance to his two brothers. And we'll let it go at that. At any rate, they all got by. And in 1937, the folks in Whitehouse ordered a set of plans. Actually, I think they may have ordered the actual house from Sears of all places. So it probably showed up on a flatbed train car, and they put it together on this lot across the street from where they had been living at the time. So this is a copy, probably do better here. Yeah, this is a copy of that house out of the Sears catalog. And it is true. That's what the house looked like. Had two bedrooms upstairs, one bedroom downstairs, like a half bath upstairs and a full bath downstairs. The only thing not depicted on this plan is a breakfast nook, and that comes into play here in a little bit. But at any rate, off to the side there on the east side. Now, what the heck is east on this? Well, it's the part that's you see the most of the windows there on the side of the house. They had an opening there for coal, and this house was, I'm slowly, this flyer is starting to win, so I'm just going to set it down. Anyway, they had a chute there. They'd come up and dump coal in there, and it went in the basement, and then the furnace burned coal. Later, when I lived there, it had been converted to fuel oil. At any rate, down in the basement, Graham had a wringer washer, and the dryer was Bobby carrying the clothes upstairs and putting them on the clothesline, with clothespins, of course. At any rate, I got plenty of practice at that in later years. Now, I was born in 1946, and so that house had been built in 1937. So I did not live in that house during that time until my dad got home from Germany after the war. But we were over there all the time until I was about 4, and then at 4, Dad went into the Air Force, and we left Whitehouse. But I came back to live in that house from 1964 until 1968. Okay, back to the construction. So they're building the house there, and there was a guy that lived next door, a guy named Arlo Sullivan. I never knew the man. I heard quite a few things about him. And so he lived in that house at the time. As the workers were building the house, Arlo had a daughter, Janice. And the workers would call Janice over, send her into the house for Arlo's beer. Now, my dad told me this part of the story. And Janice, not thinking a thing about it, would go into her dad's house and pull out a few bottles of beer and bring them over to the workers. God love those guys. At any rate, she contributed to the building of that house, I suppose. Now, once that house was built, at some point in time, on the back, Graham and my grandfather put a back porch and a breakfast nook on it. And I love both of those features. I can't tell you the number of times I slept on that porch out back because it was cool in the evenings. It was a lot cooler than it was upstairs. And I could listen to the sounds of the night. And I just loved it. I loved being outside anyway as a kid growing up. I suppose you would classify me as a free range kid. So, anyway, the breakfast nook was magic. Many meals there, many cups of coffee, and many pies sitting around the windowsills. Now, that nook had three different sides on it, and Graham would make pies. She was a great baker. And she'd open those windows, set the pies on them, and she might set 3 or 5 pies, but there was always one missing when she went to collect them. Damn magpies, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, one would often disappear. I think she knew it, but she never said anything about it. My grandfather passed away in 1955, and that really saddened me, but that's another story for another day. At any rate, my grandparents never made a payment on that house. That is a type of community I thrive in, where people help people when people are in need. I just love that environment. And I sensed that environment, I suppose, as a young child. When we were between moves, between the move from Okinawa to Tucson, we'd go to Whitehouse and spend 3 or 4 weeks. Between Tucson and Ramey Air Force Base, Puerto Rico, we go to Whitehouse for 2, 3 weeks. From Ramey to Westover, again, you get in the picture here. And I used to love hanging out in Whitehouse, Ohio. What's there? Oh, a magic world, at least for me it was. I had some playmates that I had met, and we'd swim in an old stone quarry there. We'd swim there all day and just have a ball. But back to the house. Like I said, it was a warm house, and I felt safe there because for those 2 or 3 weeks between PCS move, permanent change of station move, that was a house where none of us kids received any floggings from dear old dad. He was always on his best behavior around his mom. So we weren't flogged during those visits. And then during the 4 years in college, I was so thrilled to be living there. I commuted to Bowling Green, and then when I'd come home, I could take care of chores for Graham, whatever she needed: groceries, leaves raked, windows changed out. That was another experience in and of itself. She had these huge windows that had hooks on them, and they were storm windows. You had to put up in the winter, in the fall, take them down in the spring and replace them with screens. What a pain in the rear that was. I was always afraid I was going to lose one of those windows because you had to hang out of the window, virtually hang out, and then hook it up over a pair of hooks and drop it down. That could be a challenge. At any rate, you get the idea. It was just a wonderful, warm home at the time in a wonderful, warm community. Who could ask for more? In 1994, I stumbled into sobriety. And when I got sober, it was like, what the hell happened? I looked around and I had had my bell rung, and I was confused a lot. But one of the places that I found comfort was going over to where that house sat. Now, in 1973, they moved that house from where it used to sit in a bank's parking lot around the block and down the street to the end of the street. And I don't know, inherently, I always knew it was there. Always knew it was there. So I would drive over to where that house was, and I'd sit out front, and I'd think of the wonderful years that I had lived there and the peace and tranquility in my life during those years. And didn't bother anybody, just sat there and was with it. I've been told I have an old soul, and I'm proud of that. But just sitting there, I could feel spirits, if you will. And then one day, I saw the owner drive up. So I got out of the car and I walked up, introduced myself. I said, I'm not a stalker or a creeper. I told her who I was, and she recognized the name and so forth. And she said, well, would you like to come in? And I said, oh, you bet. You bet. So she invited me into the house, into Graham's house. And I tell you what, I could close my eyes, and the smells of that house, some of the sounds and so forth, they just came back to me. They flooded me. And I mean, I was overwhelmed with tears almost just being back in that house. That was just so wonderful. And I was able to tell her a few things about that house that she had not known about before, and a couple stories about it, this, that, and the other. And we kind of left it at that. I wanted to stay there and take it in, but I didn't want to intrude. That's not my nature. So I was with that house for maybe 20 minutes, and it was time for me to go on. And I've never been back. But I have always held a very, very dear fondness for that house, and I'm so happy to see that it's still standing and well cared for. So that's the story of Graham's house. I'm glad you took time to stop by and listen in. And with that, this is Bobo, Bass Gear. Stop.